They say having a US passport is like holding a universal key, but by 2025 that key may no longer fit. Once welcoming Asian nations are now closing their borders to Americans. From secretive regimes to conflict zones and even idyllic getaways. 10 countries have made it clear Americans are no longer invited. Watch as we reveal which nations have barred entry and why it matters more than you might think. Number 1. China, once a top destination for American tourists, business travelers, and students. China in 2025 has grown significantly less accessible to US citizens, and the change is anything but subtle. What was already a complex visa process has hardened into an outright geopolitical barrier. US-China tensions have boiled over thanks to trade wars, tech restrictions, espionage allegations, and military standoffs in the South China Sea. As a result, China has tightened visa rules specifically for Americans. Applications are routinely delayed, denied, or never issued, especially for journalists, NGO staff, dual citizens, or anyone linked to the US government or military. Even granted visas can be revoked without warning. At airports, Americans face extra scrutiny, phone searches and interrogations about their travel or political history. Tourists who once wandered Beijing freely now risk being watched, questioned, or detained. Universities have cancelled exchange programs. Corporations like Apple and Tesla are reconsidering their China strategies due to the growing legal and political risks for Americans. What was once the world's most visited country is fast becoming off-limits. Number 2. North Korea. If there's one country in Asia where Americans have no chance of visiting in 2025, it's North Korea. The border isn't just closed, it's sealed tight. The message is unmistakable. Americans are not welcome. Period. Travel has long been restricted. But after more nuclear tests, worsening tensions, and the collapse of diplomacy, the US government itself now bans citizens from going without special permission, which is rarely granted. Even if someone tried, North Korea wouldn't allow it. The regime treats Americans not as tourists but as potential spies or bargaining chips. Past tragedies, like the case of Otto Warmbier, highlight the dangers in 2025. The risks are even more severe, with detentions, forced confessions, and show trials used for propaganda. There's no US embassy, no consular help, and no safe way out. Even humanitarian workers are blocked or heavily monitored. Flights from China or Russia don't sell tickets to Americans anymore. Tour operators have dropped US clients completely. The policy is simple. No Americans. No exceptions. Number 3. Iran. In 2025, visiting Iran as an American is not just hard, it's practically impossible. What once required complex visa arrangements has turned into a dead end. Tensions between Washington and Tehran have hit new highs after years of nuclear disputes, sanctions, cyber attacks, and proxy conflicts. Diplomatic ties remain frozen, and Iranian authorities view Americans with deep suspicion regardless of travel purpose, even before Americans could only visit on state-approved tours now. Even those are effectively banned. Tour companies refuse US passport holders citing risks of interrogation, surveillance, or arrest. The Iranian government has warned that Americans could face espionage charges no matter their intentions. Dual nationals, especially Iranian Americans, are at the highest risk of being detained or used as bargaining chips. There's no US embassy in Tehran. If something goes wrong, there's no help. Even transiting through Iran raises red flags for visas in neighboring countries. Number 4. Afghanistan. Once the center of US military and aid operations, Afghanistan in 2025 is completely closed to American travelers not just by policy but by danger. After the Taliban takeover, diplomatic ties collapsed, the US embassy shut down, visas stopped, NGOs and journalists fled. What was once a strategic ally is now a no-go zone for Americans. Taliban authorities explicitly reject American visitors. Even humanitarian travelers risk detention or worse. Americans are seen as symbols of a resented foreign power. Multiple terror groups operate freely in Afghanistan. Many openly hostile to Westerners, without an embassy, consular services, or safe transit. There's no guaranteed way in or out. Journalists, former aid workers, and dual nationals are especially at risk. Nearby countries warn Americans not to approach border areas. Airlines avoid Afghan airspace entirely. Travel insurance doesn't even cover trips there anymore. Number 5. Pakistan. By 2025. Visiting Pakistan as an American is high risk, if not impossible. What used to be a tough but doable visa process has become a labyrinth of delays and denials. Geopolitical tensions have poisoned relations between Islamabad and Washington. Drone strikes, espionage accusations, intelligence leaks, and unrest along the Afghan border have all shattered trust. As a result, visa approvals for Americans have dropped sharply, with many quietly blacklisted. Those who do get in face heavy scrutiny, surveillance, and travel restrictions. Americans have been detained for photographing sensitive sites or posting controversial social media or regions, especially near Afghanistan and Kashmir, are off limits. Pakistani Americans also face harassment, watch lists, and even exit denials. The lack of transparency makes travel both unpredictable and dangerous. The U.S. State Department advises do not travel. Insurers won't cover trips. Airlines have reduced flights. And local tour companies won't work with Americans. Number 6. Turkmenistan. Turkmenistan has always been one of the world's most closed-off countries, but in 2025, it's nearly impenetrable for Americans. Officially, there's a visa process. In practice, Americans almost never get approved. Applications are routinely ignored or denied. Tourists must book through state-run agencies, provide detailed plans, and agree to constant monitoring. Even then, approval is rare for U.S. citizens. The shift is fueled by anti-Western sentiment, closer ties with Russia and China, and paranoia about foreign influence. Americans are seen as a threat to the regime's tightly controlled image. Journalists, activists, researchers, even regular tourists are refused entry. There's no U.S. embassy. Any consular help must come from neighboring countries. Movement inside the country is heavily restricted with government minders. Internet access is censored. Even diplomatic passport holders face resistance. Travel advisories now rank Turkmenistan alongside North Korea for opacity and isolation. Tour operators have stopped offering trips for Americans entirely. Number 7. Myanmar. Myanmar was once a promising destination for travelers and aid workers. By 2025, it's effectively locked down, especially for Americans. After the 2021 military coup, Myanmar plunged into civil war, violent crackdowns, and diplomatic isolation. The U.S. imposed sanctions and supported pro-democracy movements, further straining relations. In response, the ruling junta cut ties with the West. Tourism collapsed. Americans are now viewed with suspicion, linked to opposition groups or intelligence work. Visas are rarely granted, and those who get in face strict limits and heavy monitoring. Journalists and NGO workers have been detained, deported, or imprisoned without trial. Independent travel is unsafe due to checkpoints, curfews, and military patrols. Entire regions are closed, especially conflict zones. There's no US embassy to help if things go wrong. Airlines have slashed routes, and local tour companies refuse to handle American clients out of fear of government reprisals. Number 8. Syria. Syria, on Asia's western edge, remains one of the most dangerous places on Earth in 2025 and completely closed to Americans. More than a decade of war has left the country devastated and deeply hostile to US involvement. The two governments have no diplomatic ties after years of military intervention and sanctions for the Syrian regime. Americans aren't tourists, they're symbols of foreign aggression. No visas. Number consulates. No protections. Even journalists and aid workers are refused entry. Those who sneak in via Raqqa. Lebanon risk arrest, torture, or being used as hostages by local militias. Extremist groups inside Syria have a record of kidnapping or killing Westerners. Even dual nationals with family ties aren't safe. There are no Western flights to Damascus, no help on the ground, and no exit plan if things go wrong. US advisories clearly warn: do not travel under any circumstances. Number 9. Yemen. By 2025, Yemen isn't just closed to Americans, it's actively perilous and nearly impossible to enter legally. Civil war, foreign intervention, famine, and disease have shattered the country. Multiple factions, including groups openly hostile to the US, control different regions. The US embassy closed years ago. There's no consular help, no safe zones, no exit strategy. Americans are viewed with deep suspicion by both government forces and armed groups. Foreigners have been kidnapped, with Americans among the most prized targets. Journalists and aid workers have been forced out or threatened. Airports barely function. International flights avoid Yemeni airspace. Overland travel through Saudi Arabia or Oman is heavily restricted or illegal. Even neighboring embassies warn their citizens not to go. Number 10. Bhutan. Bhutan once welcomed travelers under its high-value, low-impact tourism model. But in 2025, Americans find it harder than ever to get in and often simply can't. Post-pandemic, Bhutan overhauled its tourism system, raising fees, tightening conditions, and selectively approving visitors based on nationality and diplomatic relations for Americans. Visas have become extremely rare, especially for solo travelers or independent tourists. Processing times are long. Approvals are opaque, and many applications are quietly rejected. The US has no embassy in Bhutan. All diplomatic dealings go through India, adding another hurdle. Travelers must book government-approved guides, prepay steep fees, and submit detailed plans, but even then, approval isn't guaranteed. Bhutan's desire to limit outside influence, preserve culture, and avoid political entanglements has led it to prioritize visitors from friendlier nations. Many tour operators no longer accept American clients at all.